legal opinion delivered to Parliament's Communications Committee on Thursday, which states that Ramaphosa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, had no legal justification to send the list of names the committee had recommended for the SABC board back to Parliament. Now, this happens exactly 4 months after a list of 12 candidates for non-executive board members was authorised by Parliament. The public broadcaster has now been without a board for close to 6 months. Let's unpack the story further. We're joined this morning by legal analyst Nthabiseng Dubazana, joined us via our phone lines this morning. Nthabiseng, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Before we get to this latest legal opinion on the President sending these names back to Parliament, shall we just give our viewers a sense of where we are now? What does it mean for the public broadcaster to be without a board for half a year?
It is actually quite disastrous because we're dealing with a situation where there is no accountability for anything that is happening with the public broadcaster. So if there was, at minimum, an interim board or anything of the sort wherein whatever decisions that are being made right now for the employees and all that of the broadcaster, then there is something or some way that accountability can be done. Because remember, the board is more or less like the middleman between Parliament and the employees, so that whatever action, financial or otherwise, then they can account to Parliament how they dealt with all of these situations. So it's quite a bit of a disaster what we're dealing with.
So how do we even account for the last 6 months then? Let's say a board is put into place today. Is there sort of accountability in retrospect? Is that possible?
I don't see how. Because now if the board, let's say today, they are appointed, they're starting their work, they have to now work backwards. How then do they explain to Parliament why the decisions that were made in the past 6 months were made? They were not there. Now they will have to deal with the burden of actually having to carry the load of whatever bad decisions that were made in the past 6 months, and also the load of the good decisions which probably did not come out the way they were supposed to be done by the employees who are currently doing whatever they can just to survive, because there's nowhere that they can get instructions from and carry the broadcaster the way that it's supposed to be. I do not see how the board will be able to account about anything that has happened in the past 6 months.
Sure. Incredibly worrying indeed. So let's get to the President now sending this list of 12 names from the Communications Committee in Parliament, sending that list back to Parliament. Why would you say there's no legal basis for the President to do so?
In actual fact, it wasn't about the 12 names. It was about the 3 other names that were added that were basically like the backup names in the event that those 12 names that were sent to Parliament, to him for consideration, something happens. So he, in his letter, I don't think it wasn't the way that I understood the letter at least. It wasn't a matter of saying that these 12 names I don't understand, please reconsider, or rather start from scratch and do the work again. What he was saying is that he had given me 12 names plus an extra 3. So I want to understand that in the event that I do appoint somebody, am I not jumping the gun in terms of the Broadcasting Act, whereby there is no provision for giving an extra 3 names to the President to appoint for the broadcaster, right? But the National Assembly, at the other hand, does not have a limitation on how many names they can recommend for the President to consider for the positions of the board. So I think what he wanted was clarity more than anything else, from the way I understood it at least. Explain to me that if I do anything based on this information that you've given me, will I not be overstepping, and will I not be finding myself in hot water when it comes to the legalities of appointing this board? But then it ended up turning out into what it is now, and we are here where we are.
Right. I mean, could the President not have done both things at the same time here, Nthabiseng? Could he not have signed off on the names, given that we're in a crisis situation when it comes to appointing an SABC board? Could he not have signed off on the names and also questioned those additional names on the list?
He could exactly have done the same thing, because he could have used at least the 12 that were recommended and ignored these other 3, and then inquire about these other 3 at a later stage, saying, guys, you gave me 15 names, whereas in terms of the Broadcasting Act, he's only supposed to give me 12. Make me understand why it is that you gave me 15. And then when they responded eventually to his letter, they were saying that we don't want a position whereby one of the 12 falls out, which has happened already. One of the 12 has falls out, and now we have to start the process from scratch and vet somebody new and interview another bunch of candidates and all of that. That could have been done also in chambers, if for lack of a better term. They could have just met in an office somewhere, explained that to him, like, oh, okay, and then move on. I don't see why we had to go through this lengthy process, to be quite honest.
Especially because it is, as you say, a crisis situation. Is there, I mean, it does lead one to wonder whether there's a lack of political will in getting a board into the public broadcaster.
It is very questionable indeed. Why is it taking so long? Why did it have to be a whole 4 months of waiting before you inquired? When these people were presented to you, it can't be that you were still looking and through the paperwork. It doesn't take 4 months. So it should have been a situation that once you've gotten this information, we know that the board doesn't exist for the broadcaster. Let's work as quickly as we can in order to get this thing sorted. But instead, it's become sort of like a ping-pong ball between Parliament and the President. And ultimately, remember, we have the separation of powers for a reason. He is not supposed to dictate to the executive as the head of state what to do, and also the National Assembly doesn't dictate to the legislature, which is basically the Broadcasting Act and all of that, how they're supposed to work. So now with those separations of powers in place, why is it becoming even more difficult to get things that in what we deem simple enough to do? It becomes like a mammoth task to continue with the work.
Yeah, absolutely. In the meantime, 6 months almost have passed with the SABC being without a board. Nthabiseng Dubazana, let me thank you for your time this morning. She's a legal analyst weighing in on why it's taking so long to get a board into the public broadcaster.